Overnight, Bloomberg have published transcripts of conversations between Steve Witkoff, who is Donald Trump's envoy to resolve the Russo-Ukrainian war, and several Russian officials that expose two shocking revelations. One, that Steve Witkoff, who is supposed to be representing the US, was in fact coaching a Russian official, a Russian diplomat, on how to finesse, persuade, maybe even manipulate Donald Trump. And the second transcript reveals that in fact the Trump peace plan, derogatorily known as the Dimwit plan, from the portmanteau of Steve Witkoff and Kirill Dmitriev, the Russian official, they in fact drafted the agreement and informally just gave it to the American side in the hope that they would just basically do a copy and paste job, which in fact seems to have been the case. That has been speculated since this plan was owned by Donald Trump as being his own plan over the weekend. What does all this mean? Does it mean the end of the Dimwit plan, or will we see some other developments? And what will it mean in the broader context of the Russo-Ukrainian war? Привit, greetings from Odessa, Mama. I'm here on the shores of the Black Sea, just got back, and I did a live stream on my main channel, my lifestyle channel, just because it gets more exposure there, more views, and it was so requested that I comment on the 28-point Trump peace plan, and I went line by line in that live stream. It's all kind of moot now at this stage that we've had two other peace plans come in the meantime. We've had a European peace plan that I think everybody's going to basically ignore, and then we have a plan hashed out by some US and Ukrainian diplomats that removes most of the egregious 28 points in reality from this derogatory referred to as Dimwit plan, the Trump peace plan. And as I opined in that live stream, the chances of Russia accepting even the original plan were slim to none, and definitely a revised plan that takes in the points and considerations and concerns of the Ukrainian side is absolutely not going to be accepted by Russia at this point. All of that said, these revelations by Bloomberg completely undermine the Trump administration. In fact, many Republican lawmakers are outraged that Steve Witkoff, who has no professional background in diplomacy, in dealings with Russia as far as we know, dealings with Ukraine as far as we know. He's never even been to Ukraine, even though he's supposed to be the special envoy to resolve the war. He only goes to Moscow. He only seems to want to speak to the Russian side. The fact that he was coaching, at the very least, a Russian official, Yuri Yushakov, who is a senior Russian diplomat, on basically how to set up Donald Trump by talking to him and flattering him and getting Putin to get on a call with him in order to scupper a meeting between Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and Donald Trump. If you think it was about a few weeks ago, just at the end of October, it makes it look like Steve Witkoff is not acting on behalf of the US directly, but perhaps trying to favor the Russian side. That all coincides with his previous behavior, him gushing praise for Vladimir Putin nonstop in public, and coming back from trips to Moscow, regurgitating Russian talking points. He's completely amateur, dilettante, doesn't seem to go to some meetings with even a State Department interpreter and relies on the Russian interpreter. It's absolute amateur hour at the White House, the fact that he has been allowed to continue for so long. So these leaks were obviously, first of all, to hurt him and possibly persuade Donald Trump to remove him as a special envoy, but it also exposes how Donald Trump is being influenced by the Russian side. The second transcript basically gives more evidence to the claim that the peace plan, which Donald Trump has taken ownership, and he doubled down on that overnight by again tweeting out that it was his peace plan, and second, that saying that when he was asked about these leaks from Witkoff, that it just seems like normal negotiation, that in fact they wrote the plan themselves. The Russians gave it to presumably Witkoff and the US side, and they basically just did a machine translation, perhaps altered it a small little bit and then handed it to the Ukrainians. Donald Trump gave a deadline of tomorrow, Thanksgiving, to sign it. Never mind the fact, as I outlined when I went through it point in that live stream on the Lifestyle channel, that first of all, Zelensky doesn't have the authority to sign something like that. And it involves so many different actors having to agree to it, whether it's international actors like NATO, other countries in Europe, the Ukrainian parliament. The whole thing is unbelievable. And it wasn't even written in legalese, shall we say, a legal text that would make it a real legally binding document that you could sign. I have a background in law. I worked as a lawyer, including at the EU institutions, for over 6 or 7 years. So for me, it was absolutely unbelievable to see that. And it looks like this informal, well, they passed it on informally, this kind of very rough draft, not even really a legal draft, was what they had actually planned to send to the US side in the hope that they would just take it and basically do a machine translation. It seems like copy and paste. It's unbelievable. So Donald Trump Freudian slip, doubling down on taking ownership of this peace plan, even though the US officials and the Ukrainians have now basically agreed an outline of a peace plan that's very different to the one that he proposed himself, is very interesting because it's a non-starter. The Ukrainians are never going to sign something like that. They can't even sign, Zelensky cannot even sign it anyways, politically and legally speaking. And the Russians are not going to agree to the revised document. I opined in that live stream they wouldn't even have signed the original one, the one they wrote themselves, simply because if they were able to persuade the Americans and Trump to agree to this one, well, why not wait another month? The deadline for the Nobel Peace Prize nominations is January 31st, so as you get closer to that, they could also calculate that maybe Trump's going to be even more desperate to get a deal, some sort of deal, that he may even give them something else that they dream up as part of their wish list, and then they can just send it to him again. It's unbelievable to see this leak and see the evidence to what has been speculated on in the last few weeks. It makes Donald Trump look like he isn't in control of his own team, that he's being manipulated by the Russian side, and that basically elements of the White House administration are working on behalf of the Russian side. They're definitely coaching and trying to get them to persuade Donald Trump to act in their interests. That is not in the interests of the United States, and it will be and obviously not in the interests of Europe or of Ukraine. Clearly, it is the interest of the strategic adversary of the United States in the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin. And the fallout for this could be rather dramatic. As I said, at least Republican lawmakers are outraged by this. Never mind the Democrats, which can also clearly use it for their own political gain in the United States. Interestingly, unlike before the US presidential elections, now in the US, the Ukrainian cause has a majority support of Republicans, never mind Democrats, but of Republicans. This is not a vote winner for the Republican Party, that Donald Trump looks like he is Putin's puppet at this stage, or he's been puppeteered by Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin. This is going to be a major political issue for the Republicans as they head towards the primaries. They had some elections, obviously, in the last few weeks where the Democratic Party did better than they have been doing in the previous years. So this is going to be a massive concern on a political level for the Republican Party, and it'll be interesting to see how many of them break ranks with Donald Trump and start to criticize what is going on. They have a little bit of an out because they can say, well, Donald Trump, the great leader, is like being manipulated by the Russian side. Maybe he's unaware, but Donald Trump doubling down on the fact that Stevie Witkoff, someone who's unqualified, completely amateur, dilettante, in awe of Vladimir Putin, gushing with praise all the time, seems to be working in the interests of the Kremlin and trying to get them a good deal, and not working in the interests of the United States and their own strategic goals, from what we can understand. So, shocking revelations. I'll link them down below, the Bloomberg article. And let me know what you think. What does all this mean for the direction of the Russo-Ukrainian war? We have several deadlines going into next year. I opined, as I said in that live stream, that this is not going to lead to anywhere, this peace plan, because the situation on the battlefield is that we have an impasse. Vladimir Putin's #1 priority is staying in power. Now, if he can win the war and stay in power, great. But that doesn't mean that winning the war is actually his #1 priority. And fighting on, even though he may be in danger of losing the Russo-Ukrainian war, may make sense to him. In any case, agreeing to a cessation of hostility creates a huge amount of problems unless things change dramatically on the battlefield, which for the last year or two has been Russia making very small, highly costly incremental gains in terms of territory, but basically wrecking everything, destroying all the cities as they conquer them. But there isn't much actually gained from that other than pushing the line of contact further to the west. Ukraine, on the other hand, they need to basically hang on until the situation changes. Either there's going to be some sort of technological development, they will economic development, either that Russia starts to implode economically. Always a chance. The Russian economy is under huge pressure now. It's already in recession, and they need to solve money, manpower, and materiel. And those are three big issues that they now face at this juncture in the Russo-Ukrainian war. Ukraine needs to, as the defender, hold on long enough for things to change, and then they can achieve their strategic goals in this war. Unless things change on the battlefield, neither side is going to sign some sort of capitulation deal, definitely from the Ukrainian side, or Vladimir Putin is not likely to sign something that is short of a full strategic victory for him, because afterwards he would have to go back to the Russian people or the elite, at least the elite, and say, hey, we crashed, we basically destroyed the economy, lost possibly at that point maybe millions of either people who've left Russia, died in the war, or seriously invalided. And what do we actually gain from this if it's not going to be a full strategic victory? Then he will be in grave danger of losing power in Russia. All very interesting stuff. Drop your comments down below and see you in the next video. Do побачення from Odessa, Mama, on the shores of the Black Sea in Ukraine.